Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tip. We've got another exciting episode for you today. We're talking about the fantasy outlook of the Colorado Avalanche for the upcoming season. So let's jump right into it. Let's look at Colorado's lines. That top line will be Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen, and that shouldn't really surprise anybody. That second line, I believe Saad will end up playing with Kadri and Burakovsky. That third line, I think, will be Nichushkin, Comfort, and Donskoy, and then that fourth line will end up being Jost, Belmar, and Calvert. That top power play will be Rantanen, Kadri, Landeskog, McKinnon, and Makar, and that won't change unless there's an injury. That second power play should feature Burakovsky, Comfort, Sad, Taves, and Girard. But if Byron makes a team, there's a very high chance that he gets a spot on that bottom power play as well. All right, so let's jump right into our do not draft list. And first on that list is Andrei Burakovsky. He's got dual eligibility, which is nice, but last year his shooting percentage was a whopping 19.42%, which means he scores on 1 out of 5 shots, and there's no way on earth that he replicates those numbers next year. Now, his numbers were also super inflated due to the abundance of injuries on Colorado last year, so he got a lot more ice time and a lot more top power play time than he would normally. So barring a lot of injuries to Colorado again, I don't see any way that Burakovsky can replicate the season he had last year, and so I'm going to avoid him, especially in this range. So next on my do not draft list are Samuel Girard and Devin Taves, and they're both pretty good offensive defensemen. The thing is, in Colorado, there's so many good defensemen there that their numbers probably won't be as high as last year. Now, the thing is with Girard specifically is that he did have a pretty big role in Colorado last year. He played mostly on that second power play unit and got a lot of opportunity there. But the thing is, this year, Colorado has brought in a whole bunch of brand new, really good defensemen. And so they might cut into his minutes, and he may not be relied upon as that number 2 defenseman anymore. They got Devin Taves, and they possibly have Bowen Byron as well, who's a really, really talented prospect. And he could also eat away at being that number 2 offensive defenseman on the team. So they may not look Girard's way as much this year. It's the same kind of thing with Taves, right? Like, he may be the number 2. He may need a number 4 offensive defenseman on the team. If you're drafting in this range, I'd much rather grab a guy like Kirby Dach or Jared Spurgeon, who have a little bit more of a guaranteed role on their teams. Last on my do not draft list is Jonas Donskoy, and I don't think I really have to tell you not to draft him, but his numbers last year were actually pretty good, right? He had 33 points in 65 games, so he was a point every 2 games, which is not too bad. The thing is, there's no way in hell he replicates those numbers because last year he benefited tremendously from the incredible amount of injuries in Colorado. So he actually saw a good amount of top power play time and actually saw some time playing with Nathan McKinnon. So that doesn't hurt at all. But this year that shouldn't happen. So there's no way on earth I'm touching Jonas Donskoy unless some kind of crazy injuries happen again to Colorado, in which case you might be able to scoop him up mid-season. All right, so jumping into our draft list. And first on our draft list, guys, is Nathan McKinnon. And what do I have to say about Nathan McKinnon that hasn't already been said? This guy is just so talented, and he just looks better every single year. Like, he hit 93 points in only 69 games last year, and his line mates and his whole team basically was injured the entire season, and he still managed to excel. This guy is just so talented, and he's actually ranked number 1 overall on NHL's top 250 rankings. Next on this list is his line mate, Mikko Rantanen. And Mikko Rantanen is another guy who's just so talented. Unfortunately, last year he missed a good amount of time with an injury, but I expect him to be fully healthy this year. Now, Rantanen can definitely go out of point per game pace, and he can definitely hit 60 points in a 56-game schedule that's projected. Next on the list is Calder winner from last season, Cale Makar, and this kid is just so talented. In his very first season in the NHL, he was basically producing at a point per game level, which is just insane. Yeah, obviously he got that power play time with McKinnon and Rantanen, but geez, he's looked so good last year. And there's no way, if you get a chance to draft this guy, you absolutely should. He's just such a stud, and I don't expect his numbers to dip at all this year. Next on the list is Gabriel Landeskog. And Landeskog in the past was always a decent player, but once he got put on that line with Rantanen and McKinnon, he just became a hell of a better player. He's got a great shot, and I see him having a pretty good season this year as long as he can stay on that top power play and that top line with McKinnon and Rantanen. He had a little bit high of a shooting percentage last year, but that doesn't really worry me because he's on such an elite line and such an elite power play, so I don't really expect it to regress too much. I do think, though, that drafting him at 33 is a little bit high, but if you really want to get a piece of that Avalanche top power play, and Makar, Rantanen, and McKinnon have already been taken by someone else, I don't mind grabbing Landeskog. Fifth on my draft list, guys, is Philip Grubauer, and he's ranked 44, which I think is a little bit high this year. But again, if you like Colorado and you think they're really going to excel this year, it's not the worst pick in the world. The thing is, this season is going to be a condensed schedule. So there's probably going to be a lot of back-to-backs, and goalies are probably going to share the starts about 50-50. So Grubauer and Francouz should probably see about equal starts. So it's probably just as good to grab Francouz as it is to grab Grubauer, but we don't know yet. We haven't seen the schedule. So next on my draft list, guys, is Nazem Kadri, and I really like Kadri. He had a little bit of a down season last year, especially given the opportunities he was given, but in the playoffs, he really bounced back. He ended up with 18 points in 15 playoffs games, which is just really good. That was over a point per game. And I really see no reason why he can't carry that momentum into the upcoming season. Yeah, he's locked as a center, so if you've drafted a couple of centers before him, watch out, you may not be able to play him. But if you haven't really drafted a center yet, or you only have one, Kadri's a pretty damn good option at 85. So if you want a Colorado goalie and you don't want to draft Grubauer really early on at 44, drafting Pavel Francouz at 127 is actually pretty good. Just make sure that schedule is actually condensed and there are a lot of back-to-backs in it. If that is the case, then Francouz is a fantastic pick at 127. Now let's not forget that Colorado goalies are also quite injury prone, especially Grubauer. So if Grubauer gets injured, Francouz can take over as that number one and get the vast majority of the starts. So the next guy on my draft list, guys, is Brandon Saad. And he's not a must draft for me by any means. But I do think he'll have a much better season than he did in Chicago last year. It's just a better team. I think he'll be playing on that second line with Kadri and Burakovsky. Now, if he doesn't play on that second line, I wouldn't draft him. But that second line's got a decent amount of talent, and they really showed it in the playoffs last year. So if that second line can continue their hot streak, I absolutely don't mind drafting Saad at this range at all. So last but not least on my draft list is my must draft of the video, and that is Ryan Graves. So for anyone that's surprised, Ryan Graves is actually a really great all-around player. For one thing, he played with Cale Makar. So right there, he's bound to get a few points, right? Second of all, he finished first in the entire league last year in plus-minus with a whopping 40 plus-minus. So that's great for a lot of leagues. Now, we also had 150 block shots, 134 shots, and 112 hits last year, which is great for leagues that use all or most of those categories. Ryan Graves is a guy with a very safe floor every single night because you know he's going to get blocks, you know he's going to get hits, and you know he's going to shoot the puck. So at the very worst, even if he doesn't score a goal or an assist, he'll get you something with those shots and those block shots and those hits. I absolutely love drafting Ryan Graves this late in the draft at 292. All right, guys, so the last part of the video is the keep an eye out for list. These are guys that, based on where they play in the lineup, will have a decent chance of having some fantasy value. First on the list, guys, is Bowen Byram. And this kid is just so talented. He's one of the best defensive prospects anywhere in the league. He's expected to make the team this year. But the thing is with Colorado, they have such great defensive depth that we don't necessarily know where he's going to play in the lineup. If he does crack that lineup, though, guys, I do expect him to get some second power play time. And I think he's a decent pickup in a late round if you want to risk it. If you want to get a good look at this guy, watch the World Juniors Championship. It starts on Christmas this year, and he will be in it for Team Canada. He's going to be their #1 defenseman, and he'll show you exactly what he can do. Next on this list, guys, is Martin Kaut. He's a right winger, and he had his chance last year to crack the lineup in Colorado. He ended up playing 9 games and got 3 points. I only think this guy will crack the lineup if there's an injury, but if there is an injury to Colorado's top 6, I think there's a decent chance that he gets a shot to play in that top 6. If that is the case, I absolutely would add him to your lineups. but I wouldn't draft him. Last but not least on this list, guys, is Valeri Nichushkin. And Nichushkin had a pretty decent season last year, but like I said with Burakovsky, it was mostly due to his increased role due to all the injuries on that team. The only way I would add Nichushkin to your team is if there are a lot of injuries and he gets a pretty decent role on that second or even third line if they're really clicking. All right, guys, so you've reached the end of the video. I really appreciate you guys watching all the way through. Please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know how I can improve these videos. Until next time, guys, stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.